150 years ago. There's this thing called like the Milankovitch theory. Yeah, and because like we weren't really where we should have been in the cycle, but also because of industrial action being a bit too high, we just kind of missed. Like scientists think, there's not sure. Like they speculate that we missed the next glacial period, and now because of like CO2 emissions, we've offset it by 8,000 years. But then even that needs to be proven. Like it's just like scientists saying like they think that's what happened. But there's so we do a lot of science about it, a lot of like looking into ice cores, but we don't actually look into them, but reading about people looking into ice cores and how you can tell like the planet warming and how we can maybe predict what Earth will look like in the future based on how warm it's been in the past. So it's much more like science-based rather than human-based.
Okay, I think it's 9 now, right?
Yeah, Tuesday. I
will just admit people, so come back. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, there is a poll.
Yes, please feel free to.
There's a survey.
Yeah, just a brief survey before we start. We'll start in a few minutes. Some people. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Hi, I'm Benita, and there's Sarah here. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
你咪 Ethan DG 嘅 Ethan，可唔可以改名㗎？
我唔知點改錯，就話用我 account 啊嘛。我都話我用我 account 唔得咯，我唔識點搞我呢個就 sorry。
我未 mute 添，sorry。
Hi, everybody. I'll just play some songs while we're waiting. This is my favorite song. Can you guys hear?
Yeah.
Hi, Benita.
Hi.
I'm Karina. I'm using my son's account.
Oh, okay.
Ethan. So, sorry.
Hello, Benita.
Hello, Benita. Hi. Seems we have I think we have some people from UK as well, so it's going to be a very international crowd tonight. So yeah, please while we are waiting, please do the poll so we can see the feeling of this group. And if you can maybe if you're not when we start, if you're not speaking, maybe you need to mute it because I think there's some echo right now. Yeah. So we'll start in about 2 minutes. We're just waiting to see who will maybe join us as well. And we'll start. So yeah, the presentation is available for download later. So don't worry about copying anything. We'll share this with you at the end of it. Yeah. So I'm just going to share this for a while we're waiting. It's a funny video that I really enjoy. So yeah, just sharing this for a few minutes. Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to our seminar. Can all of you hear me? If you can you wave or put something on the chat so I know you can listen to me. Yeah, hi. Okay, so I guess I have everybody. Hello, welcome to our seminar. I'm going to start. I know there's some people joining. Yep. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. Okay, see my screen? Okay. So, okay. So today, yeah, please feel free to continue with the polling. We are talking about climate change and the pandemic. I know a lot of you maybe work in related area or very interested. So why are you here? So actually, a lot of people think climate change is as serious as coronavirus. So this is a recent survey done, and as you can see, a lot of people agree that it's of equal importance that climate change is as serious as climate change as COVID. And we'll draw some parallel between the two global crises during this talk. So what to expect today? We'll talk a little bit about Sustainable Development Goals. I'm not sure if all of you know what that is, so I'm going to briefly explain it. We'll talk a little bit about the science behind climate change. And we'll also talk a little bit what does the current pandemic teach us about the climate change. We will also have a case study, which is Zara, my colleague, who helped to found the group Climate Action in Hong Kong. So she will tell us how she does her climate change work. And finally, we have Q&A. And please feel free to leave your Q&A in the chat room. Sarah will help moderating it. And also you can ask in the end of the talk. And as I say, the presentation is available for download after the talk. So yeah, you can welcome to share this information. I do want to say though, because I do intend this talk for a mainly Hong Kong audience, so I do have more Hong Kong content. So if you are from other parts of the world, which I think some of you are, please feel free to also ask us other questions. If we cannot answer it right now, we will make sure we'll get to you and we'll put this in our summary email to answer. So I'm not a climate scientist per se, but I do have a science background, and I'll try to the best of my knowledge with the help of Sarah to present this topic to you today. So briefly about the Sustainable Development Goals, they are 17 goals that are set by the United Nations in 2015 after the Millennium Development Goals, because they think that can be improved on. There are specific targets for each goal which aim to be achieved by 2030. So today we are going to look at climate action, which is the goals 13. I don't know how many of you have seen this diagram. So this is called the SDG cake. So SDG cake has 3P, actually 5P: planet, people, prosperity, peace, and partnership. As you can see, climate is down here, 13, climate action. So climate action, the planet, and all these other goals about biodiversity and clean water is the base of how we can build a society and economic condition for the other SDGs. So the SDGs are linked to each other. So just a quick introduction of Encompass, where we are. I know some of you might not join our program before. We are established in 2018 as a social enterprise. So part of our profit of what we do, we donate to our partnering NGO. We have curated different experiential workshops, from sustainable coffee to biodynamic wine to eco tour. And our mission is to assist institutions, whether they are schools or corporates or individuals, so they can help to achieve the SDG. So climate action, if you look at the sub-targets, it include, for example, strengthening capacity building, implement a UN framework. So for example, some of you may heard of IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Unfortunately, they are not able to have a physical conference this year because of the COVID-19, but they do have a lot of talk and conferences and policy on climate change. So we will look at some of this specific target later in this presentation. So what exactly is climate? So we talk about climate change a lot. So climate and weather is a two different things. Climate is the average weather over the long time, where weather is a short time. So weather, we can say what is the weather like in the next 2 weeks, but we cannot say what is the climate in the next 2 weeks, because climate is very long term and it's a highly complex system. And when we look at the term climate change, people have get very emotional recently because this is a very heated topic, whether climate change is man-made, what causes the climate change and all that. But climate change is actually a global climate variation. It also happens for natural causes as well. So if you look at history, worldwide the climate has gone through different cycles, different interglacial period. But most recently, I think when we, as a lay person, public, when we think about climate change, we immediately think of all the heated debate, all the greenhouse gas and all that. But I do want to emphasize that it also happened in the natural cause. So what exactly caused climate to change? So as I said, it's not only human activities, not only greenhouse gas, but also changes in atmosphere, and that can be natural processes, include volcanoes, tectonic plate movement, and changes in the sun. So in a short moment, I will have a short quiz on the climate change, and maybe perhaps a few of you can share what do you think is causing this. So a lot of people talk about climate change, global warming. Are they the same thing? They are not exactly the same thing. So climate change is a broader term, refer to the long-term changes in climate, including average temperature and precipitation and wind pattern. So it includes effects such as extreme weather, heavy rainstorm and all that. Whereas global warming is very specific. It refers to the increase in the Earth's average surface temperature due to a buildup of a greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. And in a short moment, I will have a diagram on that. It only refers to the rising surface temperature only, but not the other climate effects, which we will talk about in a moment. So before I go further, I assume all of you have a smartphone nearby. Can I ask each of all of us to do a short quiz? There will be 7 questions on climate change, and I have a short prize for this. For the winner for this prize, you will get a code for our Encompass event. If you join any of our Encompass event, it's 20% off. So there's incentive. So yeah, if you can all of you go to Kahoot, and you can do it either in your laptop or in your mobile, and enter the PIN and enter a name, and we will have a quiz about how much you know about climate change and what are some facts about it. So can all of you go to Kahoot and join the quiz, please? Yes, I see some names. We have Justin, we have Gabriel and Lance. Yes. So we should have about 15 names here. Yeah. It's a fun quiz. I think it will be out of your maybe imagination for some questions. It's not very intuitive for some of the questions. Yeah. Seems people can get on, so that's a good thing. We have Russell, we have Karina, Ringo. Okay, 2 more. We should have 2 more players. We have 15 in the group here. Okay, 10 more seconds and we'll start. So feel free to unmute yourself during this section. We can make it interactive. Yeah. As I said, there will be a prize for the winner of this quiz. Yeah. Yeah, so if you win, please leave your name and email in the chat room, and we will send you the code for our discount. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so we have 7 questions in this quiz. So the first question: no place on Earth is colder than it was 10 years ago.
100 years ago.
100 years ago. Sorry, 100 years ago. Yeah. So it's either true or false. The answer is false, actually. So actually, there are some places in the world that is colder than 100 years ago. So mostly it's increased temperature, but we do have localized temperature changes. AI. Okay, next question.
Earth has been warm.
So this quiz, let's go very quickly. Yes, so the Earth has been more warmer in the past than it is today, and about 3 million years ago, that's the last period that's hot. Okay, the next question is a bit tricky. Which of these factors contribute most to global warming? Okay, it's not sunspot, it's not the ozone layer, but actually carbon dioxide emission. So we'll talk a little bit more what carbon dioxide emission means. Louisa, yay. Okay, next question. So we hear a lot of things about carbon dioxide. So is carbon dioxide the most effective out of all atmospheric gas at trapping heat pressure? The answer is false. So I know this is a very counterintuitive, but actually water vapor is more effective than greenhouse gas it is. But greenhouse gas does make the atmosphere warmer and create more vapor, which traps more heat. So carbon dioxide is different from water vapor because water vapor, carbon dioxide makes water vapor evaporate quicker, not the vice versa. So it's carbon dioxide for this question. I know it's very tricky. Louisa again. Where's Louisa? Yay! We should ask Louisa to share. Okay, 3 more questions. So there's a very famous Paris Agreement in 2015 where different governments signed about what they should do about climate change. So what's the answer? What did they actually agree on? Wow, most of you get it. So it's 2 degrees. So actually, is hoping that it's within 1.5 and not 2 degrees, and I'll explain why. But the official answer is well below 2 degrees. Louisa again, right? Wow. Okay, Louisa is full on. Okay, 2 more questions. So this is a geography question. So where have some of the most significant impact of global warming have occurred? Significant and earliest as well. So where did extreme weather happen the most? Well, yes, in northern latitude. So in Alaska, Greenland, and Siberia, there's a lot of melting sea ice and permafrost. Okay, last question. Okay, can somebody to challenge Louisa? Last question. Sorry, the question got cut off. Is actually what kind is pollution? Can pollution reduce the amount of solar radiation that reach the Earth? Yeah, sorry, this question has been cut off. The answer is true. So some kind air pollution, some kind of air pollution cause fine particle called aerosols. Those aerosols absorb and scatter some radiation, including this particle could be sea salt, can be dust and soot, and they actually help reduce solar radiation. So let's see who's the winner. I think it's Louisa. Yay, it's Louisa. So thank you, Louisa. Thank you for participating, and you did very well. And please do leave us your email, and in the chat room we'll send you a code for our events a discount. Thanks, Louisa, for joining us. So now we'll go back to the main part of the presentation. Yeah. So so this is a graph of the projected temperature change. So it's hoping that we will go, our temperature change is within the 2 degrees limit as within 1.5. Not saying 1.5 is a good thing. And the why 1.5 and 2 make a very big difference is if you can see this, you can see, for example, for extreme weather, 1.5 and 0. Degrees Celsius. So a 0.5 degree difference already increased 70% in flood risk. So you can see that's why the climate scientists are so adamant about for us to decrease the global warming. So a little bit about science. Where did carbon dioxide occur? So I said carbon dioxide is not the most effective at trapping heat, but they have a big contribution. And this carbon come from burning of fossil fuel. It can also come from deforestation. It can come also from changing land use. And I know there are some people who are in climate denial there, but the evidence has from scientists, as you can see from this graph on the left here, most of the global warming in the past 60 years is human-induced, and that's a survey done by the IPCC, and it's not nature. Even though I said climate change can be from natural activity, the evidence has been overwhelmingly that human caused this climate change. And here's another diagram. The climate change is not only affecting the weather. For example, it affects ocean warming. It also put more fossil fuel in the air and in the tree. So we talked a bit about atmospheric gas just now in the quiz. So we said other than carbon dioxide, there's water vapor. So what else are there in the atmosphere? Okay, they include nitrogen, oxygen, and other gas. And actually, when we talk about the greenhouse effect, which a lot of some of you might have heard of it, that's why the major cause of global warming is that the atmosphere is like a blanket, and the atmosphere is trapping heat for a good thing, because without it, the earth will be very cold. It will be inhabitable. So greenhouse effect is natural, okay? There's some greenhouse effect. What is the problem is that now we are adding so much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that this blanket is become more and more thick. And the thick blanket meaning trapping more heat, so the weather getting hotter and hotter. So there's natural greenhouse effect, but if it's too much greenhouse effect, it will affect our temperature change, as I said, maybe even above 2 degrees. So what will climate change affect us? It will make us having more extreme effects, more extreme hot weather with high humidity. And I'll give you some example, and I'm sure we can all think of this in different parts of country, no matter where you're from. So if we look at the evidence, 2019 was the second warmest in record, dating back to 1850. The last, the warmest in record dating back to 1850 is 2016, when they have the El Nino. As you can see, there's definitely a heat trend. And for example, I think most of us know that last June in Australia, there's a huge bushfire, and scientists have said that climate change has increased the risk of bushfire. Some bushfire is natural, but climate change definitely exacerbated, and it is a very bad thing for our friends in Australia. It doesn't only affect the air, it also affects the ocean. So ocean actually trap most of the heat. And this is a diagram about a news in the 2019 that we have the new record in 2019 that the ocean is the hottest. And not only ocean, also sea level rising. So for example, in Greenland, the melting ice level has increased by 2.2 meters in the 2 months because of the global warming. And there's a monetary cost in it. I don't have data for Hong Kong. Maybe Olivia, my friend here, have more. But in US, the extreme weather have definitely caused a lot of economic impact. And not only economic impact, it also affects your air, water, food. And no matter whether you are living in rural village, small island, or big city, you are all affected. So if we are going to put a number on how much it affects our health, it's expected that there will be 500,000 of LOF by 2050 if we do not change our current prospect of the climate change. So what's the take-home lesson? Take-home lesson is climate is indeed changing, and in the near horizon, before 2015, is because of the rising trend. It's inevitable that our Earth will be warming. The question is warming how much? The long-term changes beyond 2015, we do not know. We don't know as much what will happen, depending on what we do currently. So these are some other social and economic impact, and I'm sure you have heard some of this. It affects our capacity of war. It affects our freshwater supply. Yeah. So in Hong Kong, I know some of you are not from Hong Kong, but please bear with me for the next few slides. I want to give some specific example of what happened in Hong Kong. So I'm sure you guys have all feel it, at least for the last month, Hong Kong has been so hot, right? And in last year, it has been so hot as well. And it also extreme rainfall and that increase in sea level as well. And if you look at the specific data, in 2019, it's the hottest winters on record. And just a few days ago on a Mother's Day, is our record, very hottest day on record on Mother's Day ever. So you can see the weather is really changing. And what does that has to do other than for human life? So I'm a biologist, so please bear with me. I really like talking about animal. So for example, this is a very common green sea turtle in Hong Kong, and its sex is determined by air temperature. If it's less than 29 degrees, it's predominantly male. If it's more than 30.4 degrees, it's only female. So temperature will affect the animal as well, and the sexual ratio, and that has a very big impact on our biodiversity. Just want to show you some example other than impact on human life. Again, I think all of us in Hong Kong will remember this very big typhoon. Again, this is extreme weather. This is a typhoon 10. And again, this is affected by climate change. But it's not only all rainfall, it also increased the rainfall variability. So for example, here, we can see there's a dry spell in Hong Kong a few years ago as well. So it means the climate is getting more extreme. It's either getting more rainy or getting more drought. And there are also a study by Climate Central that because a lot of Hong Kong area is coastal, and I'm sure some of you work in Central or Shanghai, and you will see this flooding scene in Hong Kong. And for impact of human health, we talk about the figures globally. And if you look at Hong Kong, if this is a study by Dr. Lam at the PolyU, if temperature increased by 3 degrees, actually we increase 18.7% of the epidemic potential. And that can be malaria or other thing. And we will talk a little bit more about pandemic and the climate change in the later part of today's presentation. So this is other impact. So other than physical impact, it can cause mental health, cause physical injury because of climate change. So this is my take. You can have different take about Hong Kong's climate change effort. I know some of you work in this area. In Hong Kong, the greenhouse gas, if you look at the high per capita emission, we are greater than Italy, France, UK, Argentina. So there's, it's not to criticize anybody, but I think we have a long way to go in terms of our climate change effort. And if you look at our electricity, accounts for 65.4% of our total emission. And even though the Climate Action Plan said we will use liquefied natural gas in replacement of fossil fuel, it's still a lot of carbon for that. It's not totally renewable energy. So I think there are different groups in Hong Kong that are coming up with different strategies on how to mediate that. So with that now, I would like to pass a presentation now to my colleague Sarah. So Sarah is one of the founder of the group Climate Action in Hong Kong, and she will share with us her personal journey, how she does get involved, what is the lesson she learned from her work. So Sarah, please continue.
Yeah, hi, so I'm Zara, and I've been living in Hong Kong for the last 13 years, but I recently went to study geography at the University of Durham in the UK. And I've always been quite interested over the last 2 years about what kind of started off firstly with plastic, which then drove into climate change and greenhouse gases, and just wondering what Hong Kong actually did. So I joined my school's Sustainability Council, which a lot of schools have. and decided to try and find out how I could get involved in really like making a difference. And then it was around the time last year when Greta Thunberg began to hit the news of her climate strikes, and I have 2 other friends, and we kind of wondered why Hong Kong wasn't part of it and why Hong Kong students didn't really talk about climate change or the problem. Like, we obviously had a group in school with who we would meet every week and talk about how we could make the world a better place, a greener place. But not many other people from my friend group were very interested in it. So we decided to actually set up Climate Action Hong Kong, which is now run by students who are younger than me, to try and get them to, well, to try and be able to plan basically a strike and try and get the government to answer some of the questions we had. And so actually, we decided, unlike many other countries, to actually submit a document which we had a few scientists help us write to the government, because we read the 2030 Hong Kong plan, which is currently in place, and realized that they, for 2030, have only really decided to go to 3 to 6% renewable energy, which we found pretty poor and felt that Hong Kong could just do better. So one of the main questions we had, or main things we were asking for in this document which we submitted, was for them to try and double that renewable energy goal to 4 to 8%, that would be, which still is very small when today Hong Kong only has 1%, but better than what it currently is at, and still more optimistic than what we are currently at. So we organized 2 strikes. The first one when we submitted this document, and it was actually really, really successful. We had about 1,000 students turn up from all ages, but also adults, parents. And it was really encouraging to see so many people actually involved and interested in this topic. And we actually did get to have some answers back from the environmental government in Hong Kong. And we actually learned quite a lot from this process. So that's more what I'm going to be sharing now to you. But we also had many challenges. So the first thing I'm going to talk about were the challenges. So the main challenges are that many people don't fully understand the science of the problem. And so it's kind of difficult to get people to understand it. They don't need to understand complex science, but probably understanding the basics of climate change. Even, for example, what we're talking about in this current seminar is really the basics people should try and understand, so that they can kind of know what they're talking about, but also so that they have a point to stand from. Another thing is lack of education. So fortunately enough, I was in an international school here where the environment and climate change is very much part of the actual curriculum. But when talking to local students, I realized that it isn't really emphasized. And so a lot of them have to go out on their own ways to find what climate change actually is, because it's not actually a core part of their curriculum. And then lastly, in Hong Kong, it's just not really seen as a priority. So we initially went off the foot that we believed that the government weren't doing much because they didn't care. But it's more that because the Hong Kong people don't necessarily put it as a priority in the financial budget yearly, they don't get a lot of money allocated. So there is only so much they can do with the money allocated, and that includes educating people, which is pretty much free of charge to do, but it means they can't install lots of renewable energy because the budget just isn't there. And just looking at statistics of 2018-2019, the budget, only 4.8% was allocated to the environment and food, and the environment doesn't even have its own budget. And actually, what the budget really went to was installing new electric chargers for cars, which is quite an exclusive product, and planting new trees after Typhoon Mangkhut, which was a good thing. But in my opinion, there could be a lot more invested in renewable energies and just other fuels which we could use in replacements. And yeah, it's just not really being done. What we also need to be careful about, and this is another one of the challenges which recently has come up, is the fake news which is going around. So it's great that during this time of COVID-19, there's been a lot of optimism. People have realized, even in Hong Kong, that the pollution has dropped, that the air is feeling lighter, that we're getting sunnier days because we don't have pollution blocking out the sun. But there's also a lot of fake news going around. For example, the 2 prime examples I'm choosing to talk about were the swans in Venice or the dolphins in Venice, which actually were fake photos. Well, they were real photos, but not in the right places. So the dolphins were in Sardinia and the swans were in a canal near Venice, but which always has swans. So I think what's really important for people is to always read trustworthy information and not believe everything they read first time. Like, try and get your information checked before you start spreading fake news, because then it just raises miracles. And although we are very optimistic that things in climate change are going to get better, there is a certain limit to which we can believe such. So the last thing I want so there's two more things. So the next thing was opportunities, and there are actually loads of opportunities in this action. A lot of people think that it's too late or that it's not worth fighting for, but actually climate change and climate action is something worth fighting for, and it actually still isn't too late. And COVID-19, I think, has shown that, you know, if we cut down cars and buses going around and even flights, some wildlife does go back to natural area, but also places just feel nicer to live in particular Hong Kong. And also it's really encouraging to see the younger generation, as seen in the climate strike, who are so optimistic and so willing to take action, and that there is more and more people concerned in this topic. In particular, for example, just a seminar, the outcome's really encouraging to see that people are actually willing to take time out of their day to learn more about climate change and what can be done. But the main thing to do is to educate people. I think that's really, really important. So the main lessons to be learned, in my opinion, this is my take on it, is that we just need to remember that we are all capable of doing it. People can come together and unite. That was seen in the climate strike. People from all different backgrounds came together and had their voices heard, and I think that really made a big difference. Not necessarily with the government, it made a little difference, but I think just even with students in Hong Kong, just knowing that they weren't the only ones wanting to make a difference and other people also care about this issue. And then lastly, the government will listen and will respond, and they did respond to us, maybe not in the way we had hoped, and it's obviously difficult for them to respond with a yes, no answer, as politics are always quite confusing and complicated. But nothing is impossible if we do try hard enough. So hopefully in the future we will see better changes in Hong Kong. And that's it, yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. So if any of you have questions for Sarah, you can leave maybe in the end, so when I finish, so we can summarize it, or you can leave it in the chat room again. For Sarah and her work. So now I will talk about the third part of my presentation, which is what the coronavirus means for climate change. So they are both global crises, and I think a lot of you would know that the carbon emission and the wildlife has really improved because of this virus, and which is the silver lining of it. But there is something I think there will be a lasting impact, because now the stopping of the industrial production is temporary, but there will be something that will last. For example, the shrinking supply chain or remote work as pattern. So if there's some infographic by this really good company, Fengage, on all this. So if you're interested, I encourage you to Google them and find out more. But I will talk specifically on carbon emission, because that's what we are talking about today. And as you can see, the carbon emission, because of the reduce in the factory and the airport traffic has really reduced. So for example, in China, 25% of the carbon emission has been filled. And how does that look in the longer term scale? And if you look at this graph, in 2020, we saw a very big dip of our carbon emission. And that's, if you look at this graph on our history, you can see that the dip usually corresponded to some significant social event, whether it's the Soviet Union collapse or the financial crash or the Great Depression. So what will 2020 know? We are not finished yet, so I don't know the final answer, but we definitely, the emission is having a dip. But this is not all good news, but because actually in some countries like China and US, actually there's already news that they were going to relax the environmental law to boost economic production. So it could be very well be, once the virus is really stopped and the factories open in place, our carbon direct emission is going to shoot up with that. So that's the sad news. So why COVID-19 is more proof that the world must focus on climate change. Although there's no direct cause that climate change does cause COVID-19, there's a strong relationship. And if you look at the World Health Organization, they said there's no direct causation at all. But I will show you some evidence which, or some cases which you can think about it. So I don't think anybody has a definitive answer, so I will leave you to judge it. So what are the similarity between climate change and the pandemic? Both are global crises affecting millions of people. We can see some governments are really slow to act on, and some people who are refusing climate denial also refusing the science of a coronavirus. So that's not a good thing. Yeah. And coronavirus, what are the other similarities? We ignore the warnings. So for example, for climate change, back in 2006, if you remember, there's a theme by Al Gore called The Inconvenient Truth, which warned everybody about the climate change. We are also warned about the pandemic. So if you're a Netflix watcher like myself, there's a great documentary called The Pandemic, which interview Bill Gates and everybody. We know that pandemic is coming, but we are unprepared. Our healthcare system is not prepared. And the speed of transmission and the impact is very globalized. And you might have heard of the term black swan. So this is actually not a black swan. It's not a rare event. This is more like a gray rhino. It's very likely, and there's obviously danger in it, but we are unprepared. Sorry, skip. So if we look at the response, obviously many government in the world has a very striking response to the COVID-19. They have the lockdown. However, curing the climate is more difficult. I think we also need to rely on the private sector as well. So the private sector has responded dramatically to it. And if private sector can reduce the carbon emission, it will make a big impact. And if we look at the economic impact, the damage from the virus is very clear. We see the numbers of people dying, infecting, but the cost of climate change can also be calculated. And some damage, like the extreme weather, which I show you from the US figure, that's easy to calculate. But there are some costs, such as the physical and mental health being, those are less easily calculated. And there are scientists and philosophers out there which say, after the pandemic, the biggest crisis will be climate change. And are we prepared for that? And also the carelessness. We can see some people in the world, they don't remain safe social distance, they don't wear masks. There's also similarly, there are people who refuse that climate change is really happening. Here's a graph I want to show you. So this is a study by Arunji and Namimbi, which is just recently in 2 months ago. They did said that warm and cold climates are more favorable to spread of virus, whereas arid and tropical climates are less favorable. So this is some evidence linking climate change and linking climate and COVID-19. You might also heard of the term zoonotic disease, which is a spread of germ between animal and people. So we don't exactly know what happened in COVID-19 right now, what animal is spreading us, but there are studies that 3/4 of our new and emerging disease actually originate from animal. So what have we done with the wildlife with that? So if you look at this, I know it's a little bit complicated graph, but it's actually a study by Johnson, and there's this concept called virus spillover. So basically, it means when there are more abundant species, when the species are more abundant, it's more likely for them to transmit disease. And this causes a virus spillover effect where the domesticated species are spreading virus to human life. The permafrost also have a big impact. So we talk about the global warming, the climate change in the northern latitudes. Because of this, permafrost are melting more quickly of the climate change, and permafrost hold a lot of bacteria. So one example is in 2005, there's a NASA scientist who find bacteria in Alaska, and that has been which the bacteria dated back 32,000 years ago. So it can say the melting sea ice might release fresh wave of bacteria that we are not expected. Again, why 2 degrees is important, because if the temperature rises by 2 degrees, 25% of our permafrost will still melt. Climate change also affect directly on our immune system. So our immune system is relying on our temperature and our immune system. However, with the global warming, virus may be adapted more to hotter temperature. That means more virus may be able to infect us. Climate change will also cause us a physical impact because our immune system is not as strong as higher temperature. It also affects us indirectly for global food security. So this is something you can think about regarding climate and pandemic. And some of the health shocks of global crisis, it usually affect the most for those who are most poor in poor countries where they are affected by air pollution and all that. So this is another example that health is most affected by those in the poor country. Sorry, I'm going to skip some of this so we can have more time for Q&A, but I just want to briefly mention it so you can have an idea when we have to show you the presentation. So I do want to show you, this is an article I wrote recently on Green Queen. I argue that when we deal with the COVID-19, let's not forget about inclusiveness and equality, because as I said, those who are poor and less well equipped are most vulnerable to the COVID-19. This is another interesting graph by Kadi. So traditionally, we said biodiversity will increase risk. So the more species you are, the more virus increase risk. But actually now, scientists have found that there's a dilution effect. So that means that with more wild animal, that when the wild animal density is higher, the density of the potential host is actually lower. So if you actually allow more and more biodiversity, it actually lower the risk of you getting virus. So this is a concept called the dilution effect. I also want to mention a concept called behavioral contagion. It's a social science term. It means the propensity for a person to copy a certain behavior. So I think some of us will know that to combat carbon change, to combat all this, we need to have more responsible consumption and production and less frequent long distance travel. And we hope that this behavioral change is not just at the individual level. This behavioral contagion is going beyond individual, but going to larger structural change, so that for example, in terms of industrial manufacturing or voting or policy, we will do more in decarbonize our global economy. So I think the rapid response from the COVID-19 around the world, the lockdown can also show us that it's possible to have immediate and more radical actions on climate change. And we need to understand that that this change needs to be really radical. Just changing to vegan diets will not change everything, but we need to look at industrial position, production, and also policy level as well. So the biggest wildcard for climate action is, as I said, whether policymaker like Trump or Xi Jinping, how will they respond to the threat of global recession? Will they relax the environmental law? How the political how the pandemic will changes the political will for climate action around the world. So yeah, this is a quote I like by a professor, climate scientist, Catherine Hayhoe. And are we in denial, or are we actually doing something about it? So I also want to introduce this concept called climate literacy. So for example, for you today to join our talk, you are understanding more about the science behind climate change and what kind of societal transformation is needed for us to do this. So as I said, beyond 2050 is really a known graph right now. We don't know whether the graph is going really way up, or actually with the extreme emission cap, we will do it. So we need all of you to do this. And I want to show you this. So other than the flattening the virus curve, I hope that we are also putting sustainability as a priority so that we will reduce the climate risk. So a final few slides on Hong Kong. So in Hong Kong, as I said, in the Paris Agreement, 195 countries signed the agreement reducing, aiming reduction of carbon emission to 2-degree increase in temperature. This also applies to Hong Kong. So I really encourage you, if you're interested to know more, this is, I didn't make this diagram, this is by the Climate Action Hong Kong, but you can see that there's a lot of plans that are coming on from renewable energy to transfer scheme to water treatment. So if you want to learn more, I encourage you to go to the site to know more. And just a little bit wake up call for those of us from Hong Kong. We need 4.2 of Earth if everyone live in Hong Kong current lifestyle. And why we have such a big footprint? The reason is responsible consumption and production. That means, are you using reusable straws? Are you trying to reduce using less aircon, kind of things? And here's my favorite slide that I love to show. So I talked about the UN SDG at the beginning of my talk. And if you look at Hong Kong people's awareness, climate action is way up here, okay? A lot of you, like today, are aware that climate action is important. But if you look at behavioral, actually, if you look at SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, we are really low. So even though people understand that climate action is important, how does that translate into action? So I think that's something for all of us to think about and encourage your friends. And if you want to know more how the different SDGs are linked to climate action, you can use this. So for example, you can read more about climate action books. You can donate what you don't use to communities. So that climate action can really relate it to all SDGs. So I'm going to skip some of this. Yeah, so in terms of responsible consumption, yes, you can recycle, upcycle, and do all this. And Sarah, you want to talk a little bit about this slide?
Yeah, so this slide is about how you, just as an individual, can try and reduce your carbon footprint. Obviously, it's quite hard to go from like doing everything to doing none. So I think everything should always be done in moderation. So the first thing is not becoming a vegan, but reducing your intake of meat and dairy products, maybe choosing one day a week where you try and have less of those or even have a day free of those. To drive less and use more public transport, which I think in Hong Kong is just such an easy thing to do. Buy locally sourced food to reduce your food mileage. Obviously, this is quite hard with Hong Kong being an island and us not growing most of our food. But for those of you who maybe do live in areas or places such as the UK, that's quite an easy thing to do, just to be able to source your food locally. Don't buy fast fashion. Obviously, it's hard to not buy fast fashion. H&M and all those shops are cheap and they're affordable, but maybe trying to then reduce your fast fashion consumption. Try drying your clothes on the line, which I think in Hong Kong, same thing, it's quite an easy thing to do with a really, really warm climate and things can dry in the same day. Grow your own vegetables. Again, it's hard, but you can actually do this indoors. Pay a carbon tax when you travel. So a lot of airlines now offer you to pay a carbon tax, which is when you give money for the time you fly. So Cathay Pacific give it as an option. And the money goes to, say, planting trees or green. You could even put it into an NGO, which is doing something good for the environment. Some people do say it's something to make you feel less guilty when you're traveling, but I think it still does good for the world. So why not do it if you can do it? Buy less and recycle when you can. I think that's really important, to just buy less things, because we have a tendency just to overbuy, overconsume, and we don't actually need to buy every little thing that we like. And the last one, which is really for Hong Kong and also the tropics, is to use your aircon at a capped temperature. The tendency of putting an aircon, I get it's hot, but the tendency of putting an aircon at 16 degrees is just sometimes not needed, and it just wastes so much energy and it's really bad for the environment. So maybe putting it at 24 degrees might be a solution. And that's what we actually did in my school last year. It's now all capped at 24 degrees so that we try to cut down. And it also saves money. So win-win. So there we go.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Sarah. So if you're interested in more, you might recognize this. This is Dai Sai Gui from the EPD. It's our mascot for being environmental friendly. if you go to the Climate Ready and Hong Kong page, there's a place where you can calculate a carbon footprint, a place with upcoming events and things you can do. So I really recommend those from Hong Kong to visit this site. Another site I would recommend is from the Jockey Club Chinese University. They also have a Museum of Climate Change. If you haven't been there, it's in the Chinese U. I think it's still open. They have a very good exhibition and outreach materials. So for example, if you're an educator, you want to download some materials, how you can introduce these materials to your students, please do this. I think most resources is bilingual. And finally, just some resources and documentaries and books we recommend for you. And again, this is all, I will send you the slides, so don't worry about it. So I think, yeah, that's it for me and Sarah. I think we have about 5 minutes. Yeah, if anybody have any questions to any of us about our presentation, I know I've gone through the material very quickly. Please do ask us. Yeah. So you can unmute yourself. You can ask us anything about the presentation or anything on climate change, and we'll answer to the best of our ability. Yeah.
And feel free to put them on the chat if you don't want to talk. I'm happy to read them out for you too.
So I have a question for you, Sarah. So how do you think this climate action group in Hong Kong, how will this group act, and also how do you see you work with other maybe NGOs or other people who are passionate about climate change and take this dialogue into the next level?
So I've actually now passed it on to students who are younger, as I went to uni and I didn't want to be looking after it with my friends from the UK. So it's actually students, this year were students who are a year younger, the ones who've just taken over now are now 2 years younger. And then they're in their final year of school. And what they've been looking at doing recently, actually, which is a great idea, is building a website, firstly to raise awareness, but also make a blog on it, so that just actually anyone who wants to write something which they're interested in it, which has some sort of relation to climate change, it can be posted. So yeah, that's what they're looking at doing at the moment, and they're currently doing and building, and that should be really cool. And it could literally be any kind of content, like say, how do you live a more sustainable life through playing your favorite sport? So it's just to encourage young people to kind of share what they do, but also if there's something they're interested in about, they can write about it. So that's what we're working on at the moment.
So yeah, David asked me, how is this presentation available? So I think those who signed up for today, you all got my email from the Eventbrite. So I will send everybody today the presentation through email as well. And please feel free to use any of the graph or resources if you think it's useful for education. Yeah. So maybe I'll share a few more slides here as well. So for responsible consumption is really a big a topic for us in Encompass. We try to, because we know that changing government might take a while, but it's possible to change individual behavior quicker. So I've been doing program like biodynamic wine and sustainable coffee, and yeah, I try to make most of my presentation available on public so people can learn about it. So I'm more about sharing of resources and ideas. Any question from Olivia or Gabriel?
Hey, hi.
Hi, Olivia. Hi.
Hi, Sarah.
Hey.
So thank you for your sharing and presentation. That's very thorough. So I have a question to flow to you guys. So you talk about, I mean, regarding the personal level, if we want to achieve the low carbon lifestyle, or what can we do as personal effort to try to make the society decarbonize on your perspective? For example, like we understand living or traveling, transport, or eating habit, consumptions. So in which aspect you think that would be the most effective way to cut your personal emissions? Yeah.
So the question is how best we can reduce our carbon footprint, right? Basically.
Yes, exactly.
I'll leave to Sarah.
Well, probably through like just responsible consumption. I think what I've learned a lot is that I went from wanting to do everything, like living a normal life, to wanting to be like zero waste, like complete no carbon footprint. And the reality is it's just really hard to do. And it also scares people. If you tell people, oh, you need to be vegan, otherwise the climate's going to end, you're just going to scare them away. So I think the best thing is just to try and like make little impacts. And I think the most important and big major one which you can make as a person to reduce the carbon footprint is probably just your consumption. So when you go out and you buy coffee, bring your own cup, although at the moment you can't because Starbucks doesn't let you. But usually you can bring your own cup, or if you're eating out, takeaway, have your own takeaway box. Or if you're buying clothes, maybe try and not buy as many fast fashion clothes, maybe buy less but not fast fashion. Travel less. I don't know, like just trying to cut down where you can, and trying, as I said, cut down on meat. Cutting down on meat is a major thing, but also don't go from one extreme to the other. You know, I think that's really hard to do, and some people do achieve it, and I find that amazing. But I think for many, it's really hard to do, and that's completely normal.
Yeah, I like Sarah's point about like maybe the vegan part. Like I know some like green activists like, oh, you must go vegetarian or go vegan, but I think it might be a turn off for somebody. But so I think starting from something that's more simple, and yeah, in my presentation, which I haven't gone through, there are different ways you can reduce the consumption. And for example, I think there are more secondhand shops in Hong Kong as well. And there's actually a group called Buy Nothing group, which is in Nama Island and North Point. And for example, instead of buying I don't know, vacuum cleaner, you can share this with your community. I think the problem in Hong Kong a lot is because we live in very separate place. Okay, we have all of us have a very buying consumerism mentality. But I know places like in UK, for example, in the library, instead of just books, you can borrow a vacuum cleaner, you can borrow a audio recorder, or borrow whatever. So I think if we have this kind of community, then we really encourage people to buy less items. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, because thank you very much. I mean, because the reason why I'm asking is I think understand your personal footprint is very important to reduce your carbon emissions or carbon footprint. So I understand that there is a low carbon living calculator published or launched by the government in 2018. So I suggest every one of us that we can try to calculate our personal footprint and then understand that whether our major emissions from the living or transport, because everyone's lifestyle are different. You guys, maybe some of them, I heard a story like one of us maybe living in the outlying island. She have to traveling back and forth by ferry. And because of that ferry, that may be, quite polluting fuels using daily. Therefore, her personal footprint, even though she's a vegan, then her personal footprint would be huge. So yes, that's why I'm trying to try to convey the message. And the second thing is a good news. Hong Kong people are indeed cutting their personal footprint. For example, like in 2014, our footprint was like 6.2 tons per each of us. But right now we allow dropping to about 5.5 tons of carbon emissions. So it's a good news, and we try to. I mean, every one of us can do something to contribute to the low carbon lifestyle path. For example, like to reduce your carbon emission from your transportation. So yes, that's what I want to say. And I mean, your sharing is really fruitful, and thank you very much.
No worries. There's also a question in the chat. Dominic was asking, are there any countries that are mitigating climate change particularly well? Benita, if you want to answer that.
I correct me if I'm wrong, Olivia. I think Northern European countries like Finland or Sweden, they are doing particularly well in terms of lowering the carbon footprint and having the sustainable design in the architecture and the building. my answer is Northern Europe, somewhere in Finland or Sweden. I don't know if you have another answer, Sarah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think they have all done really well, Scandinavian countries in particular, but I don't think there's any country out there or any place which stands out when I think about it, which I go, oh, they're so ahead of everything else. I think a lot of countries are trying, a lot of countries have tried different things and are doing well in particular areas, but there isn't one particular country doing well in every single area. And I think even if you look at statistics, often they'll have like the first 8 countries which are doing really well, and the last 3, there just isn't like number 1, 2, 3 in doing the best. There just isn't one country which outstands all the others.
Any other questions? And please feel free to message us either Facebook or email if you want to learn more. We're happy to have another discussion with you. And thank you, Olivia, for sharing the link. And I'll make sure I'll send it to everybody as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I guess no questions, and we are 5 minutes over time, which is good on time. So thank you for joining us, and we will be doing this talks and also tours, eco tour to Hong Kong as well, and other workshops. So please follow our website, and thanks again for joining us tonight. I hope you learned 1 or 2 things and maybe a little bit about science. I'm sorry I go through very quickly, but I just want to make sure everybody is on the same page when we cover these terms. So thank you again for joining us, and
Thank you.
have a good night. Have a good evening. So please feel free to email us. I'll leave it in your chat, your email. We'll make sure you get the presentation. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Hi, Gabriel. Hi, Lance. Hi. Hi.
Gabriel, is there anything you want to say? You have been staying here for an hour, very concentrated listening.
Anything I want to say.
What you have been doing? Are you still protesting at school? But right now you cannot go to school.
That's a question for Lance, yeah.
Yeah, digital strike, but I plan to maybe we'll do actual striking every week, back to actual striking every week soon. So there are 2 girls in Discovery Bay who coincidentally were doing the climate strike as well in Tung Chung. So I met them, and they're kind of my friends now. So might go with them sometime soon to do a short strike.
So the youngest eco activist that we know in Hong Kong is not 10 years old. He's actually 11 now. It's actually
Happy birthday, Lance! Happy birthday!
It's the youngest is actually 7 years old and 9 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they're striking every Friday.
At least that's what we know.
Wow. So you are the one to inspire everybody, particularly your friends, right? At your school. Did they join you?
My friends, yeah, definitely.
Wow.
They mean a lot.
Cool. So I hope you having a big plan. I mean, your plan sounds like very fruitful and like very excited to me. So I wish your plan succeeds in the coming months when the school starts.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you
Thank you, everybody. Okay.
Everybody,
Have a good night.
Bye.
thanks for the
Bye.
presentation. Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.